you ever met someone who had unconventional strength? You know, like the strength that goes beyond the weight room? I'm talking about the strength that is directly applicable to the task that life demands of us, like lifting awkward objects, carrying heavy items, or the ability to just lift things from odd angles and make it look easy. That, my friend, is true functional strength and something that is sought after by many of us. Which is why today I wanted to share 3 unconventional kettlebell exercises that will help you build crazy unconventional strength. Let's dive in. Exercise number 1 is the Kettlebell Windmill. The Kettlebell Windmill is a fantastic exercise for building unconventional strength. Part of the reason being is that when we do so many of traditional core exercises, we get used to working it in one plane of motion. We're just kind of working this forward back. We may have a little bit of rotation, but we don't really get a lot of load coming from awkward angles, which is something that we accomplish with the Kettlebell Windmill. When we do the Kettlebell Windmill, we have this hip shift involved. This hip shift is a skill that is crucial for getting your hips to work in unison with your core musculature, which makes it very functional for day-to-day life. The other aspect is that there is a rotational component, there's a lateral core component, and makes this a 3D core exercise, which is tough to attain with many traditional core exercises out there. Here are the key points to pay attention to. If bell is in right hand, point toes 45 degrees to the left. Make sure the bell is stacked directly over the top of the shoulder, and then you're going to shift your hips towards the side the bell is in. In this case, the bell's in my right hand, so I'm going to shift my hips to the right while maintaining a nice flat back. Once you've made that hip shift happen, what we're going to do is keep our eye on the kettlebell the whole time, making sure the body of the bell is stacked over the top of the shoulder before returning our hips up and rotating in the direction that our toes are pointing to finish off the movement. Which leads us to exercise number 2, which is the bottoms up kettlebell press. I love the bottoms up kettlebell overhead press for unconventional strength for a couple of reasons. Number 1 is that there is a major grip component to this press, and there is a large correlation between our grip strength and our rotator cuff stability, which a lot of us could use some help with. The other portion that I love about this movement is that it's very unstable when you're holding a bell upside down. So those rotator cuff muscles have to work really hard in order to stabilize the bell as you press through a full range of motion. This carries over extremely well to daily life, because oftentimes we're lifting objects overhead. It's like a box full of items onto a shelf. It's very rare that the objects that we lift are perfectly evenly distributed, so there is some form of instability involved, which makes the kettlebell bottoms up press a fantastic exercise to add to your arsenal for unconventional strength. But when it comes to the lower half in unconventional strength, I am a huge fan of the single leg kettlebell RDL. The reason being is balance is a huge component of unconventional strength, and if you lack balance, it's going to be hard to be strong in odd positions or odd angles. And the kettlebell single leg RDL does a fantastic job of all of this. That single leg component really challenges our balance. If we emphasize keeping our hips squared up towards the floor, like this here, then what we end up with is this kind of anti-rotational component of core stability while working on the hamstring and glute development on the leg we are standing on, which gives you a big bang for your buck for unconventional strength with this one exercise. Exercise number 4 is an absolute beast. This one here is the kettlebell jump squat. Now, the kettlebell jump squat is accomplished by putting the kettlebell actually between the shoulder blades here, almost like you're doing a kettlebell halo. Once you're in this position, you do your full squat, and just like the name hints, you're actually going to add a jump at the top. It's meant to be a very explosive exercise. You don't necessarily need to go for a lot of height, but what we do want is that rapid extension of the knee. And believe me when I say you will develop some gnarly quads if you end up doing this exercise. The other part about this is oftentimes when we are thinking about explosiveness with the kettlebell, a lot of the movements that emphasize that happen to be from this kind of high hinge position. This is one of the few exercises where we can develop that explosiveness from the hips from a deeper range of motion in a squat here, rather than developing the explosiveness from a hinge pattern here. And that is why this one here is one of my absolute favorites when it comes to developing unconventional strength for the lower half with the kettlebell. Which leads us to our 5th and final kettlebell exercise for unconventional strength, and that is the rotational kettlebell clean. The rotational kettlebell clean has a few steps to it that are really important to note. Number 1, if the kettlebell's in your right hand, your toe is going to be pointing 45 degrees to the right. Once the bell is cast, remember how I was talking about that hip shift earlier with the kettlebell windmill and how it's important for, getting this unison of your core work with your hips? Well, this is the perfect example of that, because in order for me to decelerate the weight as I cast it out, I actually need to do that same hip shift like we did inside of our windmill in order to decelerate the load. But a huge part of that deceleration is also my obliques, and guess what? They're also part of the acceleration phase of this as well. And this is something that is so key when it comes to unconventional strength. Things that are rotational in nature are human in nature. So if you think about anything from swinging an axe all the way to using a rake, even if it's just something as simple as pulling out some blackberry bushes from your place, these are all things that require some degree of rotation. And that rotational strength we can develop with something like this rotational kettlebell clean makes it extremely functional, will help you build that unconventional strength that carries over to day-to-day tasks. With that being said, if you incorporate these 5 unconventional exercises into your training regimen, you will develop crazy unconventional strength. Which of these 5 exercises are most helpful for you? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, smash that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.